Hi Year 8, so we are in term 6, the final week, ready for the summer holidays nearly. So this week we are going to introduce you to an independent research project that asks you to look in more detail at some of the issues that you've looked at over the course of this term. You are going to need access to the Caboodle textbook again and the instruction sheet on the school website. And just to start off, you'll also need some lined paper or your exercise book. So we're going to recap the prior learning first of all. On the screen there are 9 questions relating to the issues of plastic waste, climate change and sustainable tourism. I want you to answer these questions without looking back at your notes. Try to do it without looking back. You can pause the screen here for as long as you need, but it should only take you about 10 minutes. Remember, you don't need to write the questions out or write in full sentences at this stage. This is just a quick memory recall test. So if you pause the screen now. Okay, let's go through some answers then. Number 1, the term used to describe pieces of non-biodegradable plastic, that's microplastics. Number 2, how many years does it take for a plastic water bottle to break down? That's 450 years. That was in one of the diagrams in the textbook, so make sure you pay close attention to diagrams because the information in them can be quite important. What is a gyre? Well, that is a circular pattern of ocean current, which are responsible for the garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean, for example. Carbon dioxide and methane are both examples of what? Well, they are both greenhouse gases causing climate change. So how much have average temperatures increased since 1850? By about 1 degree. Average sea levels have risen by about 20 centimetres since 1900. The most popular tourist destination for UK tourists, that's Spain, owing to the temperatures and climate and also the proximity to the UK. The travel time is quite short in comparison to other places. Mass tourism is when you have many tourists all in one place at the same time. Often it can cause a negative impact on the environment or the culture or the economy of that place as well in the long term. So sustainable tourism is not quite the opposite of mass tourism, but almost. It is still tourism, but it has a positive effect on the local environment, positive effect on the society and the culture of the area, and a positive impact on the economy as well. Okay, so this week's work is going to be an independent project, and you can find this project on Caboodle. I'll talk to you about where to find it later. So first of all, the questions: what is the project about? How do I present my project, and when is it due in? Let's look first of all at what the project is about and how you present it. I'm just going to take you into Caboodle now and into the Key Stage 3 book, and I'm going to click on the resources section, and then down on the left hand side I'm going to scroll down until I get to chapter 12, global issues. I'm going to click on that and find the 2-week topic, the Virtual Explorer Global Issues resource. I'll click on that and I will see a pop-up window occur on my screen. Now you can find it that way as well in your Caboodle once you're logged on, but there is going to be an easier way I'll show you later too. This is what you'll see when you click on that link though, a brief introduction to what the topic is. We're facing important global issues that affect the future well-being of our whole planet, and they need to be resolved by countries around the world working together. So you're going to choose a global issue that you want to explore, And you're also going to choose how you present your work as well. So the next few slides on this resource are going to show you what the topics options are and give you a bit of a brief outline on what to include. They'll give you some ideas on how to present your project and also some resources and activities that can get you started. So if we just click through on the next button, the first screen is which issue are you going to research, going to explore. And you've got 3 to choose from: plastic issue, the climate change issue, and the tourism issue. Now when you click through these tabs, you'll see that the brief changes slightly. All of them have a big, bold statement to start with, which is an overview of what the issue is. And then just underneath, you have some bullet point questions that you should answer as part of your research and as part of your presentation, and also some extra bits to find out and evaluate, often based around advantages and disadvantages to do with the schemes. So you can choose plastic, climate change, or tourism. One of those 3. Maybe you already find one particularly interesting to you or something that you're already particularly passionate about, so choosing might be a bit easier for some of you than others. Hopefully, once you've read through that and the work you've already done will help you to make your choice. So how are you going to present your project? Well, this is where you can get as creative as you like, really. There's some ideas here on the screen, things like an information poster, artwork or a model, diaries, vlogs, blogs, news reports, which can be written or video type reports, adverts, again, printed or videoed. You can do animations or stop motion films, documentaries, and that's just a small list. You can also think about poetry, short stories, if you're a bit of a creative writer, or maybe you're a musician or a budding songwriter and singer who wants to write a song about one of these issues. Get as creative as you like. Planning your project is quite important. This is, as you will see from the title of the resource, a 2-week topic. So even though we are setting it for you over a slightly longer period, it's only really expected of you to spend 2 weeks working on this as a minimum. So you need to think about the topic that you're choosing and whether or not the method of presentation is appropriate. Okay. For example, it may not be appropriate to do a diary entry of plastic in the ocean. It may be more appropriate to do a diary entry of a sustainable tourism holiday. So think about whether or not the topic and the method of presentation are actually compatible with each other first. Try and be as creative as you can with your presentation. That doesn't mean you have to be artistic. I'm definitely not artistic, but you can still think creatively about how you produce things. It could be a piece of art or it could be music, but it equally could be a very well put together and carefully considered layout of a poster, and that is equally creative. Some of you may want to stretch your skills and challenge a little bit more by doing something you've never done before. Maybe you've never made a movie or an animation, and that's something that you might like to challenge yourselves with. But there is a warning here. You need to be realistic about the time that you have available. If you are going to need too much time to learn the new skills, then it may not be the best method of presentation. You may also be limited by the materials or the resources that you have access to, so make sure whichever method of presentation you've chosen, you have what you need in order to achieve it and do it well. So if you want to do a video, make sure you have access to video editing software, because if you don't have that, you may not be able to do a good job. When it comes to the division of labour, it's important that you spend about 50% of your time researching the project and working on what's going into it. And then the remaining 50% can be spent on putting it together and finally presenting it. You could, in that sense, split your work across the 2 weeks. This week you can spend doing the research and the planning, and then next week putting it all together and finalising it all. One last point of information: you must consider how reliable your information sources are. You've heard this many times before, I am sure, but looking up one website, let's take Wikipedia as the obvious example, it may not be 100% accurate. So if you're choosing to use something from Wikipedia, it may be worth just double checking with another couple of websites to see if they say the same thing. And if they don't, it may be worth looking into it a bit more and just checking how reliable your information is. The third tab on this screen, what makes a good project, is basically your checklist. The checklist that you need to be working towards as you're building your project up. The one I want to pay close attention to right now is this one here. Show that you can work independently to produce an original project. Now, what that essentially means is that you need to make sure that the work you produce in this final product is your own work, your own words, that you haven't copied and pasted, that you haven't handwritten word for word onto your poster what was on your computer screen or what was in the textbook. You need to be putting it all into your own words, your own style, and that will make it an original project. So that checklist will be there for you, and before you hand something in next term, you will be able to check what you've done against that checklist there. Finally, the last screen within this resource shows you some of the resources that you can use on Caboodle. The student book is basically a clear link straight to the chapter that you need for those issues. The animations are if you are choosing to do something with graphs or maps and looking at some specific skills. If you're not using graphs and maps, then it may not be worth using those animations, but they are there for you to watch and learn from if you're going to find it useful. The extension activities are a series of worksheets. These worksheets are the worksheets that you've already used as part of your main lessons earlier this term. So make sure you look back at that work and use the questions and your answers in that work to inform your project as a starting point. Okay, so that there is the instructions for the project. I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint now and look at that last question. When is it due in? This is a little bit difficult for us to give a specific date at the moment because we don't have everyone's timetables, and we may have different teachers next year. So what we have decided to say is that because this is technically a 2-week project and we are now in the last week of term, this project will not be due in until the 2nd week of September. That means you have 1 week this term and 1 week in September at school in which you could get this project done. And if you choose to use your summer break as well, then that's fine. So your project will be due in the week beginning the 7th of September. And when you've got your timetables and you've met your class teachers for next year, they will give you a specific date in that week for you to bring your project in. Okay, so just a few examples now of how you might choose to present your work. So we've got here some examples of a scrapbook, and you can see that this scrapbook here has used some graphs, some diagrams, there's text down here, more diagrams, pictures and images. So that's one way, quite a creative way if you think about they've clearly considered how they've laid out each item on the pages. Another option is 3D models. This is not a model of anything that you have studied, but you can see that they've got an annotated 3D diagram of, it looks like tropical storms or something, maybe. But you could produce a 3D model, and notice that they've included labels and annotations and making that more detail, giving the clear idea of what they know about that issue. Perhaps you're into art or sculpture or maybe photography and you want to do something artistic and create something. This here is an example of a plastic sculpture in the Museum of Plastic, New York City. If you choose to go down the artwork route, what we would like to see to go with your piece of art, whether it's a sculpture, a set of photographs, a piece of textiles work, a bit of painting or pastel colours, what we would like is for you to have a written piece to go with it, just an abstract, something that describes and explains what your artwork is about, what inspired you, and the knowledge that comes with that. So that if we decide to put a display together, perhaps for open evening next year, we will have something to put with your piece of artwork so that visitors and people seeing your work have a bit more of an understanding about it. Perhaps you want to go down the display route and create like a science fair display of your research and what you have found out. So we've got a couple here, one looking at ocean ecosystems and one there looking at climate change and again aquatic life as a result of that. These are just a couple of examples and you can see how carefully laid out they are. The information has been nicely spaced, titles are clear, often a different size to the main text. You've got pictures there to go with it, and the colour palette is quite minimal on both of them. They've only used a few colours. So another option there. The last one is posters. Now, in my experience of teaching for over 10 years now, when I say posters, what I say, what I mean, and what students understand often come out as two different things. So this one's a really important example to look at if posters is something that you would like to do. Posters are great, but there are different types of posters. What you see here is an information poster. Here is another one. And a third one. Now, what all of these posters have in common is that it is largely text. Largely information with diagrams and boxes to help separate that information up and chunk it so that it's easier for people to read. You'll notice also that the colour scheme on all of these posters are quite minimal again. And you'll also see that most of them use columns to help separate the work, and that the titles and subheadings are usually larger, bolder, and sometimes in a different colour to indicate where new sections start. So academic posters, information posters, these are some examples from universities and school resources. They are used at university as an official way for students to present their work. So a poster is not the easy option. A proper academic poster will have lots of information and lots of detail in them. So when we look at these posters are a no-no. These posters are campaign posters, which have a very different purpose to information posters. Campaign posters are about raising an issue, making people aware of something, but making them go away and look for the information further for themselves. Your posters, if you choose to do them, need to be information posters that give people the information they need, not just a catchy phrase. Okay, so on the instruction sheet, you will see here a link. This link takes you straight to the information about the project in Caboodle. If you're logged into Caboodle and you click on that link, it will come straight up on your screen. And then underneath your instructions, we have some useful links here as well. Broken down into each of the options, you've got 4 for each there, just to get you started. A few websites that we think may be a good place to start. The first link is also a link to a YouTube video, which is how to make an academic poster on PowerPoint. So if an information poster is something you're interested in and you want to do it on a computer, that video might give you some ideas as to how to do it. Of course, you can do it by hand as well. That's absolutely fine. So, remember that you can come up with whichever presentation method you like. If you're not sure whether or not it's appropriate, please do email your class teacher and ask them for their opinion on what you could do. But just like the previous 2 video lessons, I've now got a question for you at the bottom of the screen in red, which I would like for you to please send your answers to your class teacher in response to. Which global issue are you going to research in more detail and why? So based on this introduction that I've given you today, which issue are you going to choose to base your project on, and why have you chosen that issue? Why has that one caught your attention when the other 2 did not? Okay, so the only thing left to say is have a really lovely summer holiday, and we're looking forward to seeing what you produce in September.